Hi lads, how are we doing? This is officially the first video of a new series to get to National Master. I'm going to only be playing over the board games because that's the only way you can get chess rating, and I thought this would be such a cool series to do. I'm going to show you an over the board tournament that I've just played, and I'm going to be trying to play a lot more over the board tournaments as the weeks go. So let's see how we can do in our first attempt to improve our over the board rating.
Hey lads, it's a new year, January in Arizona, and look at this beautiful weather. I'm going to be going to my first chess tournament of the year. The US Chess Federation has me rated at a little over 1100, and I'm going to be improving on that today, hopefully. The opponents I'm going to be playing are in the next bracket up. I've paid a wee bit extra for the tournament, and you can play up into the next division. So I'm playing in the 1200 to 1400 section, even though I'm a wee bit lower. So if I do go even today, my rating will go up because I'll be playing against higher opponents. But I'm hoping that I can crush every game today because in this division, there's a cash incentive. I'll discuss the games like usual, but I really am trying to see if this year I can improve my rating and go for a title. I mean, it's not going to happen this year, but I think an ultimate long-term goal on the channel, I haven't really talked about much yet, is getting a title. If I could become a national master or something, that'd be awesome. Let's get into the reviews and I'll jump into each game as they happen. Hope you lads enjoy. Stick around for all the games because there's probably going to be an exciting one.
Hey lads, in game one, we got to play against a young girl named Aditi. She was rated 1209 and my rating was 1119. So someone quite a bit higher than I was, and probably the highest opponent that I've faced so far in this whole over the board journey. We had the black pieces in this game, so let me show you what happened. So she played d4, and immediately I was thinking she's probably going to go for a London. And I only really have one opening against d4, and that is the Dutch. So I played my pawn to f5, and you guessed it, she just played all the typical London moves. Now, the thing about the London is you can play very, very accurate, good quality chess for the first 10 or so moves, because the London, you always get your pieces to the same squares. So that's what happens here. She put her bishop on f4. I responded with the knight onto f6, looking at this center square. She brought her knight out to f3. I connected my pawns. She brought her other knight out. I brought my bishop out, getting ready to castle. She played the pyramid structure. That's what it seemed like she was going for. It's a typical London idea. I castled. Pyramid structure has come. When I say pyramid structure, if you're looking at it from white's perspective, it looks like there's a pyramid. I pushed my pawn to d6, which is the classical Dutch, because that's the one I mostly like to play. She brought her bishop out to c4. And here I started to try to think about what I'm actually doing instead of just playing robotic opening moves. So in the classical Dutch, what you're always trying to go for is a control over this e5 square. And so I want to get a pawn there. That's what I start to look at. How do I get a pawn there? Well, I've got to maneuver maybe some of my pieces to defend that square before I push it. However, when she played the bishop to c4, I saw she was lining up against my king, and my pawn cannot push because the bishop is pinning the pawn, so this pawn cannot move. So the first thing that I thought I needed to do was get my king out of the way. So that's what we went for, king to h8. She put her knight forwards looking at this pawn. She's also got a bishop here looking at the pawn. So she's got two pieces looking at it, and I only have one defender. So here I thought, I can't really defend this pawn anymore. I'm kind of in trouble, because if I defend with the queen, then the knight takes. I can't recapture with the queen first. I would have to recapture with the bishop first and recapture with the queen only after her bishop takes, or something like that. So instead of trying to defend it, I thought, I can threaten this piece and stop it. And so, yeah, I didn't get my e5 push in, which is what I always want to do in the classical Dutch. But I was able to do this setup, which is a setup that I sort of know. It's called the Stonewall Dutch. And the Stonewall Dutch is very solid. It's just a different sort of game that I'm not as used to. In the classical Dutch, when I can get this push in, then often I can swing my queen over and my rook up and my knight over here and my bishop activating, looking at h3, and everything just starts to attack this side of the board. With the Stonewall, it's much more positional and slow, but I felt like I had to play this move. She pulled her bishop back, and so here I went for this move. Put my knight into the middle, and I'm wanting to swap it off for this knight. Now, here the engine says it is a mistake, and that's because the engine says she could go for these moves. h4, h6, queen h5. And this idea is very hard to stop. It's kind of stressful. The queen's looking at us, and I can't take the knight here because the pawn is pinned, and maybe she's going to be able to get her bishop here to e5 and really start to attack my king. She didn't go for this though. When I played knight e4, she mistakenly took with her knight, and this is a clear mistake. I thought about this for a little bit here, and I just recaptured. And the reason this is a mistake is because I have two pieces attacking this knight, and it's only defended once by the bishop. I also have a pawn here attacking the bishop. So basically, when my knight moved in here, I had a discovery attack on this knight. And so really, she probably should have, if she was going to trade off, take with her knight backwards so that this piece is defended. Or instead of taking with a knight here, she could have just taken with the bishop, because then when I capture back here, I'm not hitting a piece. She captured with the knight, so I was actually able to hit the bishop. This was not so good for her. And you can see the evaluation bar is slightly in black's favor here. But here she found the only really good move, I think, which was queen h5. And she sat and thought about this move for probably about 15 minutes. She also has h4 here, which is very crazy because I just take here and it looks like I'm really just winning. But she didn't want to go for that. She brought the queen out, which I think was honestly the best move. And when she played this move, I said to her, that's a good move. I don't know if I should talk to my opponents, but I did verbally say that to her because I thought it was a really solid move. I played h6. I'm not threatening to take the knight because I'm pinned, but I thought if I play this here, she's not threatening checkmate. She then retreated her knight and took my pawn. And so I thought for this move, for probably the longest duration of the game, what I probably should have done, looking at this now, is I should have taken the bishop with my rook. And when she recaptures, then I take her knight. She recaptures. And here, white's actually up a pawn. But if you look at the pieces, she's got 3 minor pieces, and I have 4 minor pieces. She's got 2 rooks, but I think 4 minor pieces are generally better than 3. And especially like when her minor pieces aren't super developed, I think I could get my pieces out and start picking off her pawns and just play really solid here. The reason I didn't go for this was I was just really worried about the queen coming here to g6, looking at h7. But honestly, I could have just moved the knight here and got the knight to this square, looking at the defense here. So I would have been totally fine. I did consider this, but I didn't go for it because I just didn't know exactly what was happening with this knight. So she took, I took, she brings her queen in, h6, she goes back with her knight, and instead of capturing this, I went for this move, which I spent a lot of time thinking about. I also considered taking the knight, but I thought taking the knight, she takes back, and I still have this threat of the queen coming, and I didn't like the look of it. So I thought about this move, coming here with the rook, and it just seemed very interesting. I knew that she could block with the knight, but then I thought maybe I can swap off, take off, and I'm still getting both pieces for the rook. However, she played the best move, a move that I was not expecting, queen to g6. And she gets out of the danger, and now if I take a piece, she could take back I could take the other piece. She takes back, and she's already lined up against my king. So this is just looking very scary. So I take the knight instead. Here she recaptures. My rook is going to fall here. And I was thinking maybe I should just let her take it. Maybe I should just allow this and then I take here because my bishop's holding the pawn. But I was starting to feel very uneasy. Here I move my queen to f8. And this was the biggest mistake of the whole game. I should have put it really on g8. I think if I had gone to g8, this is much more solid because I'm holding h7. I didn't spend as long thinking about this move, and I really should have considered it more. But I was just very stressed about this whole thing, so I thought if queen f8 and she recaptures, then I'm probably okay. I can capture here, and there's no attack on my king. She's got 3 minor pieces, and I have 4. So I thought I'm okay here. However, she doesn't need to capture. So when I go queen f8, what's the move? You've probably already guessed it. g4. I play bishop to d6. She captures, and I recapture the pawn. She then takes my rook, and I recapture. And I was just trying to find some way that I could have a bit of counterplay, but I wasn't able to find it. Here she pulls back this direction, which I was kind of unsure about. And I didn't really quite know how to develop the rest of my pieces, but I knew I needed to get my bishop and my knight involved in the game. Moving this bishop, I knew she could take this, and I probably shouldn't have allowed it, but she does go for this, and I put my bishop here looking at her rook. If she takes my rook here, I have to take the bishop back. I can't take this rook, because then she just captures both pieces. So I kind of felt really dumb about moving this bishop in the first place, but for some reason she took my bishop and I just recaptured with knight. So I started to think, maybe I can survive this. She's only got 2 rooks and I have a knight and a rook. She's got a lot more pawns, but maybe there's a way that I can squeeze out a draw or something. So she plays the move h4, trying to get her pieces closer to my king. I bring my rook over to e8, lining up against the king. She plays h5. I thought it was a bit of a silly move because it doesn't really do all that much, but that's what she went for. And then I played f4, trying to open up the king. If I can get the king open up, then maybe I can have some like continual checks on the king and force a draw. She goes rook f1. I thought she should castle, but she didn't. And so here I'm like, I just need to open it up and try to attack this king. So I attack with check. She moves her king, and I defend my rook. I don't know if any of this is all that great. I feel like I'm struggling to find a way where I can continually check. If I put the rook on e2, they can move their king, and I don't have a check on this diagonal because the queen's holding the whole diagonal. So I didn't really have a lot of hope. But she brought her other rook over. I put my knight here looking at this idea. So let's say she took, then I actually have a check here and maybe winning the rook and checking on the dark diagonal. So it was an idea, but I knew that she probably wasn't gonna take this rook. She's probably just gonna stop this knight moving, and that's what she did. She played b3, which was just a very solid move, stopping the knight, jumping into the game. My move here was a waste of time. Now I'm gonna have to move it back, waste of tempo. So I decided to just take her rook. They took my rook, and then I check here with the queen. Here she can just trade off, take, and now she's got a rook. She can just go here and win this on the next move. So she's just winning if she just wants to play really safe. But she decides to keep the queens on, and here I have to pull back because she's threatening a checkmate in 1. She does it anyway. I swap off, and she mops up the rest of my pieces with a very simple checkmate. I got completely outplayed by this little girl, and really I should have taken more time in the middle game where she had that sort of mistake where I could have won a piece, but that was really my fault. If you look at the review, it says that she played with a 91.6% and I played with a 78.9%. So honestly, she just played really, really solid. I was impressed with how she played, and I was a bit frustrated with myself, but what can you do? You got to take those opportunities when they come. And I think back here, I had an opportunity to do well. I just need to play the right moves by taking that bishop. If I take that bishop, I think I'm going to be doing fine. I did have knight d7 and knight f6 to hold the h7. It could have happened, but I didn't take opportunity when it was there. You got to grasp every chance you have. Let's jump into game 2, which I have to say is a lot more exciting, and I think you guys will really enjoy. I went into the playing hall for game 2, and the arbiter at the chess tournament said that I had a bye, so I wasn't able to play anybody, but I would get a full point for it. I didn't want to do that. I came to a chess tournament to play against people, and it so happened that somebody in the next division up, in the 1400 to 1500 division, also had a bye because there was no opponent for them to play. So the tournament director said, well, if you do want to play, why don't we pair you with the person in the next division up? So I said, okay, let's do it. So game 2 was against James, who was a 14-15, the highest rated opponent I've ever played, and I got to get the white pieces. Let me show you this game. Super exciting, one that I'm very proud of. In this game, I got the white pieces, and so I played d4. He went for e6, and I was expecting a French, but that's not actually what my opponent played. He played a Dutch, which apparently gives me a really strong position right out of the opening. I should have taken central control, swap off here, and I have a knight developed and a pawn in the center. Probably could have been quite a good game for me. The light diagonal looks very weak for his king, especially because this pawn's already gone, so I can already go for it. He comes here. Maybe there's some kind of tactic, winning a rook. I don't know. But looks like a dubious move. But instead of trying to pursue that idea, I just develop my bishop like a muppet because I'm thinking jabava, jabava, jabava. He pulls his bishop out to b4. I go e3. He goes knight f6. I go knight g e2. I actually have a question about this move. When you're annotating, is this called knight e2 or is it called knight g e2? Because knight c e2 is not possible. The bishop is pinning this knight, so this knight can't actually move. So do I annotate this as knight e2 or do I annotate it as knight g e2? Even though this knight can't move. Let me know what the answer to that is in the comments. Anyway, he pushes b6. I go a3, kicking the bishop because I'm like, I hate this pin. He takes, I take, and now my knight from g to e2 to c3 is developed to a good square. He fianchettos. I pull my knight to b5 thinking, okay, we can go for some of these jabava ideas. I think I probably should have developed before I did this. But that's okay. He has none of it and completely blocks down the dark squared diagonal here. No hope for me attacking there. But I do see this pawn on d6, and I think maybe I can attack it. So I swing my queen up to d2. He tempos me, so I move to one of the safe squares, but a square that I want to be on. I'm attacking this pawn 3 times. However, he is defending it 3 times, so I'm not able to do what I want to do. Maybe I can kick this and then sack a piece, take with check, and maybe win a bishop. I don't know. Those thoughts are all going on in my mind. He tempos my queen again. I have to pull back, and here he pulls his queen to e7. I'm thinking, okay, there's no real way for me to get this pawn, but what other pawns in this position are weak? And I saw this pawn on e6, so I developed my bishop to c4 to go after this pawn. And technically, he's doing totally fine if he just plays one of these pawns forward. So if he goes d5, not so good, because I can attack this and win his rook. But if he does this one instead, then I have to pull my bishop back or take. And taking is not that great for me. So take, bishop has to pull back. Actually, my top move here is pawn to f3. just to tempo his piece, and he's already tempoed mine. But I would probably have played back here, and then my bishop's not looking at anything because the pawn's blocking it, and now he can start kicking my other pieces back, and my attack has basically failed. Look at the evaluation. I'm basically down a whole knight here. Instead of playing the pawn to e5, he moves his king in to defend that pawn, and so I still have a bit of hope. I play d5, and if he takes here, I'm doing totally fine. I can recapture, and that's actually what happens in the game. And then he pushed my knight away on a6 to b5. So I have to move this guy or lose it. So I decided, instead of moving this guy and losing tempo, I just take his piece. So I take with check. He's forced to recapture, and I move my knight to d4. It says the position is completely equal, but actually he's got a really beautiful move here. He could have played g5 and just really gone after this bishop. If he goes g5 here, I can't take. I'm forced back. Then he goes pawn f3, or f4, I'm sorry, and I can't take because then he's got discoveries with his queen and his knight taking my bishop. So just so you can see that, pawn here, here. If I capture, he wins this with a check with the queen. So what am I going to do here? d2, and he takes this one. I mean, this probably isn't his best move, but he's up 7 points. I don't think it looks all that bad, and psychologically I was really worried about this whole thing. He didn't find this move. Instead, he just played his pawn to g6, and so making everything solid. And I think the reason that I did so well this game was because my opponent never really felt like they were winning, and I think I felt like I was winning the whole game. But I guarantee you, if my opponent had felt like he was winning, he probably could have found some of these more aggressive ideas. And I think that's something really important to learn from this game, is even though I wasn't winning in some of these positions, I felt like I was winning the entire game. And I think that gave me a psychological edge. I thought I was winning, so I was just completely ready to crush him, and I was looking for aggressive things that I was going for. Anyway, I go f3, kick his knight, queen c3. He pulls his rook over here, doubling up, looking at this, and I was now starting to get worried about g5 and then f4, but he never went for this idea. He just maybe didn't see it. I don't know. I castle, just getting my rook developed. He pushes a5. I take his bishop, and he recaptures, and I finally go b4. The king is on this square, which means the knight can't move. It's pinned. So he has only one option, is to take, and I recapture. This knight's going to go down on the next move. So he just gives it up and doubles his rooks. Take, take, and now I move my rook over to one of the central files. Don't want any funny business here with this whole idea again. He doubles his rooks, and I move my king. Lads, I'm not quite sure what was going on with the analysis there. I've just switched the view here, and so this is showing properly. It was looked like it was like a move behind or something, but here when I go king to d2, you can see the analysis bar goes completely even, and the reason is he can just start tempoing my queen. My queen has no home. He could have gone rook a3, and let's say I go to b2, go rook a2. Let's say I go to b1. If he comes to a1, okay, I have 3 attackers, and I can now win both rooks for a queen, but he can just go here, protecting, and the game's completely even. We have very equal position. There's nothing I can really do to attack him. He did miss this idea of rook to a3, so I got very fortunate, and he went pawn to d5. And so from this point on, I just trade off the rooks. He defends his rook on a8, but I just take it off. And then from here on, I just managed to checkmate him. Takes a little while, but we do eventually make it happen, chasing his king all over the board. And here I just force the queens off. And here he actually can tempo my king away and win my bishop, but I knew that I could just take d5 and I was going to be totally fine. So I wasn't really stressed here. And I just get a queen, try to checkmate him, and we eventually do so with queen to b2. I was super happy that I won this game. Beating someone who's couple hundred points higher than me was a super boost to my chess self-esteem, and I felt very confident about it. The next two games were against a pair of brothers, and I've played one of them on one of my previous games online. These two guys go to my church. One of them's named Eric, and one of them is named Dexter. And in the next game, we play Eric, who was slightly lower rated, but I really struggled against. And the final game is against Dexter, who's a little higher rated, who I managed to do quite well against. So let me just show you the two brothers and how I was able to play against both of them. Let's jump into game 3. When I say that Eric was a little lower rated, what I really mean was he was slightly lower rated than Dexter. So Eric's rating was 1273 and Dexter's was in the 1290s. So let's have a quick look at this game. I played d4 and Eric played knight to f6. So knight c3. He played c6. I took control of the center. He played g6, getting ready to fianchetto. Looks like he's doing a typical Pirc setup. And so I decide I'll go for the 180 attack because I always lose it online. No, that's not why, but because I think it's a very solid opening that's easy to play. He goes bishop to g7, ready to fianchetto and get his king castled. And so I just pull my queen up. And here I'm ready to castle, ready to put my bishop here, swap them off, get my queen in here, and look at maybe advancing these pawns and going for checkmate against this king. He castles. I put my bishop here on h6 so that this pawn can't move. He pushes, I castle, and now the pawns start to push. Very excited. You can see I'm up 1.55 already. He takes. I take his bishop, tempoing his rook. He takes my bishop. I then can capture the pawn. If I had just captured the pawn first, he would have captured my bishop. So you have to make sure you do things in the right order at times. But here I have two pieces looking at this pawn and it's undefended. So when he moved his knight to e5, I was feeling very confident. We are up a whole pawn. The engine says we're plus 1.44. And I was ready to get this victory against Eric. However, I start to go wrong. And I don't know what the best plan is here. I was thinking, do I push my pawns against his king? Do I develop my pieces? And ultimately, what I really needed to do was develop my pieces, maybe get my knight here to e2. I think that was the top engine choice. But we really go for the wrong plan here in this attack. And I push my pawns. Yeah, knight e2 was the best move. He pulls his knight over to g4, and I continue making mistakes, and I push even more. He pulls his knight out, and I make even more mistakes going after this knight. He takes my knight, and I take his bishop. And here the position is completely equal. Yeah, I'm up a pawn, but my bishop's in danger, and I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing. He attacks my rook, so I move it, get it out of danger. It's the only square I can put it on. You really saying this is a big mistake? I mean, that's crazy. It says here my best move is to take his knight on c3, which is not super obvious because then he takes here. And yeah, I have two very developed pieces, and his knight's kind of far away from the action, but I just didn't feel good about this, so I didn't go for it. So in this position, I move my rook up to h2, and he gets his knight out of danger, attacking my rook. I pull my rook back. However, I was thinking about this move, rook to d7, which is the move I really should have gone for. It pins this pawn so the pawn can't take my bishop, and I'm threatening a pawn here. Always make threats. Stop trying to be defensive. The reason I didn't like this was because I thought rook here, and if we swap rooks, then he has a checkmate here, and I just didn't like the look of that, and that really scared me a bit. So I foolishly put my rook on d2. He attacks it, I move it. He attacks it, I move it, and he forks both of my rooks. I was just like, what is going on? This little Eric kid is destroying me. So I try to defend. He takes my rook. I try to pin this pawn. He attacks my bishop. I move the bishop back. He attacks my rook. I take the free pawn. He moves his knight. I capture so that I can take another free pawn. And now I'm starting to feel, maybe there's a little bit of hope. I'm only down 2 points. Here I move my rook. He moves his rook, and he's planning to go like this. Would have been much easier if he just went here and here, because that's only 2 moves instead of 1, 2, 3 moves. But it is what it is. I try to solidify this and start pushing my Charlie pawn. And here he doubles his rooks, so I don't want to lose my knight, so I have to move it out of the way. He checks my king, I move. He goes after my knight. And I just decide I'm going to sidestep with my rook and get out this way. If he wants to take, I'll take with the rook, and I still have an active rook. He checks me, I run. He checks me, I run. He takes the free pawn. Now I'm starting to sweat. I push my pawn. He moves his knight in. He's getting all his pieces to attack my king. I push my pawn. He goes after it. And I see here, this is actually checkmate. So I got to stop checkmate. I can't protect this pawn. So I pull my rook up. He goes for the check. I have to block. He takes the pawn. So he found a way to stop my c pawn and absolutely destroy me. So now, after he checks me on c3, I move my king to a4. And here I'm just kind of like frustrated. I'm like, I'm already lost. It's a forced mate in 11, so I just make it easy, and he checkmates me in 1 move. That was game 3, and kind of hurt. I felt like I didn't play very well here. The engine says that I played with a 71% accuracy. I had some chances at the start there, but nothing much after that. And my opponent played with an 83. So Eric actually played very, very well. Is what it is. But his brother was in game 4. And I think you guys will really like this game 4 because I actually play a completely different opening. We go for the English. And I haven't played the English since like day 30 on my YouTube series, which was like back in, I think, December of 2023. I haven't played a game of the English opening since that time. The reason I played the English was because I had played Dexter online and he knew my Karo Khan, he knew my Jabava, so I just wanted to hit him with something new and different. And I didn't know what color I was getting, but we did get white again. So 3 games of white in this tournament. Very lucky. 3 games of white. But the final game, we play the English. So let's jump into it right now. Here we go with game 4. I play pawn to c4. A very different kind of opening. My opponent plays f5, the Dutch. I play knight c3, knight f6, g3, e6, and Fanchetta the bishop. Common idea in this opening with the English is to get your knight here, control these light squares. Get your bishop here, control these light squares. And the pawn here is controlling. We can eventually go e3, d4, and control this pawn. It's just a very, very solid setup. You can even bring the knight here to look at this square. You can bring it here to look at both of them. But this bishop is a powerhouse and your king is extremely safe. So if you're looking for an opening that is extremely solid, that you can learn some simple ideas in, you can almost always get into a good middle game fairly safely. However, there's a lot of tactics in the English, and it's quite an advanced opening to learn. If you're going to learn it, you got to put in some serious work, but you can get to a middle game fairly easily. Bishop b4, e3, and here he blunders because he goes for the typical classical structure. You should only really be playing this move to stop a knight jumping to e5. And I don't even have a knight on f3, so there's no need to play this move. This is just a generic setup move for the classical Dutch. And the reason that it's not working here is because I have a queen a4 check, hitting the king, hitting the bishop. And you might think, oh, he can just defend, which is a typical normal response in the classical Dutch. Put your knight on f6 and defend that bishop. But he can't do that because I have a bishop here ready to take it off with check, winning the bishop on the next move. So Dexter calculates all that, sees all that, and he instead plays his knight to d7. I take the bishop for free, and he plays c5, kicking my queen away. I have to retreat, so I go back to b3. I'm just holding this pawn and thinking maybe I can eventually, push some stuff here, open this pawn up, and go for the pawn on e6. I just thought the a file didn't look so active, but actually a4 probably would have been a better move because this piece is pinned. Just looks pretty solid. He castles. I move my knight in. He pulls his rook up. Very weird move. I thought at this point, I'm definitely winning this game because that just seems so strange. But then I go d4. He takes, I take, and we have our pawns, and we just want to open everything up because we're up a whole piece. If we have extra pieces, we've got good development. Let's just open the position up and get things going. So he pulls his rook over to b8 to defend this pawn. Not entirely sure why he did this. He saw that I was attacking it twice, so maybe he was worried about me taking, but honestly, let's say he just moves his king here and I take. This doesn't seem so good because I can't move the bishop out of the way because my queen will be taken. So I don't think he needed to go b8. Apparently it's a top engine move, but I castle, he goes b6. So I go rook to e1 and he pulls his knight back. This looked really strange. I was confused about what he was doing, but I get my pieces as active as I can. This bishop's looking down here. This bishop's looking down here, and now I'm ready to just open everything up and just take pieces. He goes h6. I put my knight here, looking at this pawn. Bishop's looking at the pawn, and he's only got one defender, so he pulls this back to defend the pawn twice. I pull my queen over to attack it 3 times. He pushes here, but when he pushes here, I can start my attack. I'm attacking this 3 times. So we take, he takes, I take. And now what happens to his rook? He can't capture my bishop because I win his queen. So this rook's going down. He pushes it up here, but the bishop's hitting these squares and this bishop's hitting these squares. So he's going to lose it. I take, pull the bishop over here to protect my pawn. He pulls his queen out to maybe try to get aggressive. Just put the knight on f4. It kind of protects everything, protects the light squares here. There's no way for this queen to really get in. It's going to take a long time. 3 moves here for the queen and the bishop to checkmate me. But it can't even checkmate me here. It would have to come to all the way to h1 to checkmate me. I was feeling pretty confident, especially after he goes bishop to c8. I pull my other rook in, trying to get all my pieces into the game. He pulls his knight over, and here I just push my pawn. My rook's holding the bishop, so I was totally fine pushing this pawn. I was like, let's just open it up. Take, take. He attacks my bishop, and here I decide I'll just take his knight off. I'm defending my bishop, so even if he takes here, I can recapture. And now we just find a forced mate. It's a mate in 9, mate in 8, mate in 7, mate in 6, mate in 5, mate in 6, messed it up, mate in 5, mate in 4, mate in 2, and checkmate. So I kind of found a mate in 9. It was close, sort of. He didn't play all the most accurate moves. I didn't play the most accurate moves at one point, but there it was. Knight holding this square and the queen and rook holding all the other ones. We started this tournament with a rating of 1119, and we ended this tournament with a rating, I believe, of 1164. We got a lot more points for beating the 1400, and we didn't do so well in a couple games in the lower section. But because of that 1400 rating win, I think we got all the way up to 1164. I'm very happy with this result. We increased 42 points. That's quite a lot for one tournament. So sitting at 1164, and to get to National Master, we need to be 2200. That's a long ways, but I am ready for this journey. I hope you're ready to go along this journey with me, and I'm going to be posting another over the board recap of another tournament next week. Hope to see you guys in that video. Bye for now.